brother, yeah. Brother, yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Them Brothers from Inglewood podcast. I'm Hoopy, your host, and it is a privilege to be back in the studio to share and create dialogue. Um, Before I introduce today's subject, I want to just ask if you would like, subscribe, share, and ring the notification button so that you'll be abreast as to every time we air a fresh and new episode. I'm just really excited, because this is a very needed conversation, and it's a very familiar topic that I'm going to introduce, and I think that we'll all have a lot of fun with it. And I'm going to ask that you would comment in the comment section. Just place something there. If you have articles or materials, have props or something you want to just paste in there, please do, because we want to generate questions so that we can go and deliberate on them, go through them, and find, answers or resolve to some of the questions that you might have. And then your comments, we're not too established to where we can't take constructive criticism or suggestions that might be powerful for the podcast and make it more interesting as well as sound. So we're inviting you to do that. If you feel led to do so, we're going to ask that you would, of course, keep your comments respectable and healthy. We don't mind a healthy debate, but we don't want to be on here arguing and fussing and fighting. We want to find resolve. So it is just really, really needed. And I felt, as I was looking into my own situation, I wanted to talk about this subject, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. I want to announce the subject in the form of a question. What is the difference between conversation and communication? I think that we engage in both, but I think we probably place one above the other, or some of us think that it's the same thing. Having a conversation is actually communication, or communication is having a conversation. And I think that they are in the same family. They are cousins, that they do represent a similar family group, but they're, I would say, executed differently, and they're actually applied differently. Well, what do you mean? Well, if we just go from the basis of what each word means, I think we can kind of, springboard from there. We can just launch from the understanding of both definitions. And, communication, the definition for that word, it probably doesn't get discussed enough. We just assume that we know because, some of us are talking, we're having dialogue. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're thoroughly communicating or communicating effectively, because I think most people walk away with an assumption. It's never good to assume. I learned the hard way many years ago. You never assume. You just ask. If you want to know if that person or those persons would rather not inform you, at least you did ask. So not knowing after asking is not necessarily your fault. I think a lot of times we fail to ask, and we normally assume. So I just want to kind of lift the definition of communication and then also conversation, so that we'll just kind of be on the same page. Communication is to talk, especially on a personal or a direct level. It is the ability to communicate or to talk between two or more people. We see that in which, most of the communication derives from either sharing news or some type of idea in an exchange. We're exchanging words, or we're exchanging information, ideas, concepts, whatever that might contain, but we're doing it with someone else. So we're actually communicating in that regard. We can also characterize it in a sense to where we're communicating in a chat. We're communicating through writing, through texting. We're communicating in a discussion. We're communicating from the standpoint of having a certain quality of conversation or communication, where it's heart to heart or head to head, or it's just direct dialogue. And I think communication should be informative. Communication should be a series of exchanges between two or more people. Just like a conference, when we go to work or we're at, home, and I used to do this all the time. I used to call a family meeting. My kids used to walk around the house talking about, oh, we're having a family meeting. We're having a family meeting. We're having a family meeting. They were really small. So a family meeting to them was really a time to get, both of their parents together in a setting where we're all sharing our voice. And of course, over some type of dessert or meal. My sons, when they were really young, they loved to eat. I think they still love to eat. And even my daughter, she's the baby, so she came a few years later after the boys. But after she got of age, we were still calling family meetings. And so it was a time for us to get together and just discuss whatever was happening in our family, or new strategies, something that we wanted to talk through and talk about, because of course, the kids weren't old enough to make major decisions, but at least we were able to keep them abreast as it relates to what we were doing. Because, kids, they, accumulate friends, they get into a comfort zone, they like their schools, they like their neighborhood, they like their home, they like, familiar surroundings. And so if you're going to make major decisions within your family, I think you should come together and have a family meeting or some form of family discussion. And one would probably say, well, who heads the meeting? Well, if there's a man in the home, if the man is still leading his family, then he should lead the meeting. He doesn't have to have all the ideas, or he doesn't have to just lay down law. But as a spiritual leader of his home, of his family, he would be the one who is orchestrating the meeting. And we know women are very administrative, and we know that they have extremely keen skills in those areas of management. So they've done it for us as adults, as well as children coming into the world. They nurtured us. They were our first teachers. So we're not discluding or looking at a female as if she could not head the meeting. I'm just speaking of the order by which God has designed it for men to lead out, to take charge, or to take a leadership role in providing and protecting and securing his family. Okay, so that's pretty much making it make sense and not being offensive to the women that are watching this podcast. So when we look at communication, it is really an in-depth time of dialogue, and it's like, there's so many adjectives to describe communication. A colloquy, some form of assembly where we can come together and have these major discussions. So I wanted to say that in regards to lifting the definition of communication. And then there is also a very interesting perspective of communication when you're talking about imparting or exchanging of information or news. I think communication is the depthness or the specifics in conversation or conveying thought with someone or various people. I think it has to be detailed as it relates to not only getting the information out and getting your point across, but so that other people will have an opportunity to understand through processing what they've been told, okay? So communication is also a form of exchange information or news that is given. It's also a means of sending or receiving information, such as phone lines or satellite. And then we just mentioned technology through texting and things that would provide a channel for us to get that information across. We have the internet, the World Wide Web. And I tell people all the time, the internet is good. It's been great inconvenience, but the internet can be your worst enemy also. The internet is actually undefeated. I hear that a lot pertaining to social media, because a lot of things can be manipulated. It can also be recorded and documented. It can go into the cyberspace and hibernate for lengths of time. I'm not that computer savvy or technologically inclined, but I do know that once that stuff go into cyberspace, it takes some real knowledge to retrieve it, to cancel it, to pull it back. But I don't know if a lot of that stuff is even you're able to pull that stuff back through erasing it or whatever, because if that was the case, a lot of crimes would have not been solved through tracking and leaving a paper trail of certain things where, they can, the authorities can obtain pictures, information through texting. You know how the thing went with Trump. President Trump was allegedly accused or found guilty of, treason, spying, had something to do with fixing the elections and, so on and so on. But a lot of that stuff was through technology, through internet, through that technological aspect of the way that we live. So we understand that communication can be transmitted and even transferred through technology and through these other components that we have been afforded to this present day. And then have you ever thought about, your car, your vehicle, the way your vehicle has been manufactured and put together, and what your vehicle actually does for you in this modern day? It has navigation. You put an address in, and that address is recorded, and now not only do you see a map of where you're going, you hear a voice navigating you to where you need to go. So there's a narrator, who's actually giving you sort of like a play-by-play, and we've taken advantage of these luxuries in this modern 21st century. So we see that communication is very, very important. It's very, very pertinent as to the way we communicate, the way we gather information, the way we communicate that information. So the process by which we're speaking of in communication is a process or act pertaining to the exchange. We go through that process to get information to and from. We get this over and clear to other people, expressing, these thoughts and these ideas, or this news. Sometimes people live in another state. They live in another country. Sometimes people don't pretty much have a landline in their home. It's hard to make contact with them, and then now we have these devices where we can actually send a typed message or voice message to someone's phone or to someone's email, or it's just a well needed situation to actually convey, or for conveying information, as I forestated, ideas through that process really, really helps us out. And I'm going to kind of go into a different aspect of why we communicate, because I think relationships suffer behind failed or poor communication. I know this personally because I've been in business relationships. I've been associated with people. I've been on jobs. I've been on athletic teams. I've coached teams. I've trained people in athletics. I have a family. I have children. I've had to be in direct contact with people and convey information that was necessary and needed in order to not only move that relationship forward, but maintain it. And I haven't always succeeded. I won't say that I am a communications expert. I'm learning how to get better at it. I'm learning how to master my own emotions, my feelings, and also my thoughts, so that I can process them and situate them to convey them. And I don't think that I've ever had a problem communicating. I wouldn't say that has been an issue in my past, but I do believe that I haven't been an effective communicator during certain times of my life and in certain sequences. So when I look at the idea of conveying my thoughts, or skillfully writing and speaking to others, gesturing, it all plays a huge part in communication. Communication is totally different when you're needing to share something or needing to receive something, and that line or exchange is not happening, because now you're limited as to actually retrieving information or giving information to find resolve, right? So usually we communicate because we have to. We communicate when there's a problem. We communicate when there is a misunderstanding. We communicate when there is a lack of information and we need to fill in those blanks. So another aspect of our communication is transmission. How do we get that information across? How do we get it to the next individual or to the group, to the team? How do we ensure that this information will touch those that we intended it to touch? And so when we look at the transmission of it, we also have to look at the message. We have to look at the context. Is it a social communication? Are we in the same room? Are we in the same office? Are we in the same building? Are we at the same place, same location? Is it going to be a social contact type of situation, or will it be via telephone, via email, via like we have Zoom now. We have different ways to communicate. So how is this going to actually happen? Well, however it happens, it should happen. It needs to happen. You gotta find a way to talk. You gotta find a way to get information out and get information in. So when we look at the social contact aspect, we have to look at the interaction. See, some people rather not interact. They rather talk through text. They rather talk through a chat. They rather FaceTime you. They rather get on a live stream where, whether it's Skype or it's Zoom, and they can see your photo, they can hear your voice, and you communicate like that. Well, sometimes that's efficient when you're in different places, different locations. Someone may be out of the country, they may be out of the state, they may be out of the city. They may not be available to be there in person, but you still have to communicate because there is a need, and it is important that you do so. So I'm trying to cover a few areas that we lack in succeeding based on the situation. Some people will say, well, hey, I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't tell you because I was somewhere else, or you weren't available, or I didn't want to text it. It's too important to text. I'd rather see you face to face. I'd rather, see your gestures. I want to see your facial expression. I want to see, how you deal with it emotionally. And that means something. And I feel the same way when it comes to texting. Texting, I agree with my colleague. He told me once, he said, well, texting is the texter's interpretation. It's not so much for the reader. And I have come to realize that has a lot of truth in it. It has a lot of validity, because sometimes you can get a text or receive a text and read it, and all of a sudden you feel in a certain way. And it may not have been intended for you to feel that way or make you feel that way or for you to take it that way, but the way it was text without a lot of grammatical, I would say it may have not come across in a good, healthy grammatical form, and we just spin it a different way. We read it a certain way, and it's like, oh man, it goes left on us. So I just think that plays a huge part if you're going to communicate something very important or something that really requires a more in-depth conversation. You need to have a proper conversation, which really turns into complete communication, as opposed to some of the other things that are taking place. So when we see that conversation and communication are in the same family but two different things, we have to go back to realign ourselves with what is communication and what is conversation. Conversation is to talk. Communication is to impart information. It's to give news or give clarity to a subject matter. So, conversation, we talk specifically with someone or with various people, and we convey our thoughts from there, or we communicate, which is more in depth and detailed, so that we can understand how we're sending the message, how we're receiving the message, and the details, so that we can align ourselves with that information. And like I said, the transmission part of it is really messaging. What is that message, as opposed to what is the assumption? What was the gesture? What is the message here in this communication? This line of communication, what is the message? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to receive? What am I getting to process? I need something so I can process it. And if I have a limited amount of information, then I have a more difficult time processing what I've heard, or what I think I heard, or what you didn't say. And I think that's the huge problem with most people. We really don't know how to say what we haven't said. A lot of times it's, I think it's respectful. I think a lot of people are, making sure that they don't offend the other person. They don't hurt anyone's feelings. And that's great. I respect that. I think you're a respectable person to consider that. At least you show compassion and empathy, for other people. So with that being said, we can't walk away from the table not giving out the information. We still have to communicate the information. Why? Because if you don't, it's going to build, it's going to get worse, it's going to be stressful on you, it's going to raise maybe curiosity in the person that needs to receive it. So it sends you through a lot of unnecessary emotional channels. And those of you that will agree, please chime in, put something in the comment section, because you don't always know the full story. We can guess, women are quick to say, oh, I have the women's intuition, it was just in my gut. I had a gut feeling and I just knew something wasn't right, or something, was wrong, and whatever, okay, that's good. But, feelings play tricks on you. Your feelings and emotions are like a roller coaster. They're up, they're down, they're to the side, they're to the back, they're in front of you, they're behind you. Emotions play a huge part in poor decision making. We're not to make major decisions based on how we feel and where we are emotionally, because a lot of times those are not, I don't want to say they're not real feelings, but those are altering feelings, and it will actually lead you to make a hasty decision or a not well thought out decision. And so we have to be careful. I heard someone say many years ago, never make a promise because you're excited. And never, how does it go? Never make a promise when you're excited. And never, I forgot the other part. Never make a promise when you're excited. And never, Oh, never make a decision when you're mad. Never make a promise when you're excited, and never make a decision when you're mad or when you're upset. I like to use the word upset. My spiritual mom, Mother Irene Shoemate, would always tell me, saints don't get mad. We get upset. We get dusty, but we don't get mad. Dogs get mad. So I've always tried to refrain from using the word mad, because mad in terms of definition actually means crazy, or not in your right mind. So the English use that word quite a bit when people are acting bizarre or outside of the character or hostile. That is a strong English word that is used over in the UK. But what am I saying? I'm saying that we have to be careful with assuming more so than having a conversation and communicating what needs to be communicated. As I forestated, I'm guilty. I haven't always communicated what I was thinking, what I was feeling, but I will communicate and ask questions and actually have the dialogue. I'm going to do that. Sometimes I wait too long, or I'll sit back and I'll give the other person or the persons an opportunity to pretty much want to have the conversation. They want to have the dialogue. And I realize that some people, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be offensive. They feel like not really talking about little small things is better, because there are other larger things to deal with. And I respect that. Honestly, I do. I just think that if you're going to have clarity, if you're going to be on the same page, you have to communicate that. You have to get clarity through that individual or those persons. Like I said, it could be an individual, it could be a team, it could be a work-related issue, it can be a personal related issue. It could be marriage relationship, it can be a courtship, it could be dating, it can be a friendship, an association, whatever it might be in, I will just say in category, it still requires the fundamental thing, which is we gotta communicate. We gotta have a conversation. I think just to piggyback on dating, when we think of dating, a lot of people have a different definition of dating. And is it wrong or is it bad? I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I just think that that's their view of dating versus courtship. I know courtship sounds very, very ancient to a lot of us today in this modern day and time, but courting is different than dating, because dating, in my estimation and in my knowledge, through experience as well as information shared with me, dating is a process of, or the introduction of getting to know someone, to getting acquainted, to having options to see whoever you want to see until you make a decision to just be monogamous. And I'm not, believe me, trust me, I'm not condoning being a player, because being a player is not limited just to the male species. If being a player was just about men having multiple partners, women, I think that that's an overstatement, because women have the ability to date more than one guy as well. So do we call her a player? If you're going to call a man who dates multiple women a player, and then you see that women date multiple men, is she a player too? So that's something you can also put in the comments as far as, monogamy as opposed to just, having an open relationship or whatever your arrangement might be. But I'm specifically talking about dating first. Okay, dating to me is having the flexibility or opportunity to see whoever I want, whenever I want, why I want to see them, where I want to see them. And my dating process is evaluation. I'm dating through evaluation. I've heard women say to me, honestly, over the years, I've heard women say, well, I don't date aimlessly. I don't just date to be dating. I date intentional. Okay, well, it was explained to me dating intentional is actually dating a person with purpose and it leading to marriage. How do you say you date someone hoping to get married to the person that you're dating when you have to get to, or you have to get past dating to get to a monogamous relationship, which is the courtship, because now two people have agreed to be monogamous. So now that you're in a monogamous relationship, you're no longer dating. See, I think that's where the confusion happens, is because we think we're still dating a man or dating a woman after 6 months, after a year and a half, we still call ourselves dating. No, you should have established when you went from the dating aspect to the courtship, to the monogamous aspect of relationship. Now you're seeing him only, he's seeing you only, you're monogamous. You're in a relationship. You're in a courtship. Well, why do I say courtship? Or why do I say, that's the relationship? Because now you've learned enough about the person, you've seen enough about the person to say, now I want to try and exercise the next dimension to this relationship, which is ultimately marriage. This person that I'm now monogamous with, I've deemed eligible or have the potential to be married. I can marry this guy, or I can marry this woman. And now I only want to see her exclusively because I want to grow with her. I want to see how we cohabitate. I want to see how we get along. I want to see if we can get to that next dimension of decision. And I think that has been the huge problem between couples and people, is because we're probably together for all the wrong reasons. We see things. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that, they're not good people, but we see that this situation is not good for me. And if it's not good for you, you should convey that, have the conversation, and you really should end it or reach a conclusion that we would be better off working together, networking together, being friends, being associates. We're not going to talk about the intimacy aspect of it, because if that is not your decision and that is not something that you feel is going to improve your status or your situation, then why are you participating in that manner other than a good feeling, right? Let's just say that's the decision you made and you want to be intimate or continue to be intimate because it's a physical thing. It's physical. It's not so much on the books as to, hey, I got potential to really, tie the knot. So, having a conversation is one step, but you have to have complete communication if your relationships, whether it's personal, business, romantic, otherwise. In order to make that solid, you're going to have to communicate. And so as I bring this conversation to a close, because, you know, we're winding down, and we see and understand that there has to be a decision. A decision needs to be made pertaining to the success of these relationships. And I just believe that we fail to succeed when we fail to communicate. And that's on both ends. I'm guilty of it. I've been in situations. I've been married, and I don't consider myself, doing a great job at the communication in the communication department, because maybe we didn't agree, and I didn't want to be disagreeable. I tried to share my thoughts and move on from there, but it didn't always work out that way, and it would end up coming back up. And I learned that in relationships prior to my marriage. I experienced similar things. I held back information that I should have shared because it was needed. We started assuming, things got out of whack. Now it's a problem, and it's a big problem, because initially we didn't come to the round table and say, hey, let's discuss this. Let's communicate. Let's be fair to one another. So I think a lot of times people feel like, well, I don't owe this man an explanation. I don't owe him an excuse. I don't have to report to this man. He's not my father. He's not my elder brother. He doesn't pay my bills. He doesn't do anything for me. He doesn't make my life. So it a lot of things are thought and not said, and eventually it ruins the relationship, and sometimes it actually creates controversy between you as human beings. I refuse to get to that stage where I'm practicing on how to deal with an enemy. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to have an enemy. I don't want to deal with a person who I feel is my enemy, and I have to walk on eggshells, or I have to tread lightly, because this enemy has the potential to harm me or something. So I don't want negative relationships. I want resolve. I want conflict. So if you have any ideas that you want to provide pertaining to this subject, please put it in the comments section. This is a very, very interesting topic that we can continue to discuss. So this is probably the first segment of this subject of the difference between conversation and communication. So I'm signing off. This car is coming to a stop, and it's been a pleasure. It's been great talking with you about this, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, and ring the notification button. And we'll be back with fresh content. Take care. See you soon. Peace.